Welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews in partnership with Roadrunner Sports, and today we're taking a look at two carbon fiber plated shoes from Saucony. We have the Endorphin Trainer and the Endorphin Pro 4, so let's run with it. Before we get started, I do want to say these shoes were provided to me by Roadrunner Sports. However, no one had a chance to preview this video. This file synopsis is my own. I'd also like to say please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing. Here we go. These are two carbon fiber plated running shoes like I mentioned at the start of the video. However, they sit in different categories. The Endorphin Trainer, as the name implies, is a super trainer, kind of takes elements of a super racing shoe and a regular daily trainer and creates this kind of hybrid mixture. It's good for faster workouts or all-around running, and I think it is a rather unique option, especially with some of the technology that I'll touch on later. Then on the other hand, we have the Endorphin Pro 4, a true super racing shoe designed for the half or full marathon. This has kind of all the bells and whistles you could imagine. Saucony does have two racing options, the Elite 2, which just came out, and then the Pro 4, the one here in my hand, which has been out for a while now. One tidbit I do want to say is the Endorphin Trainer is basically the Kinvara Pro 2. Same kind of setup and features. I think they just changed the naming convention to make it a bit more clear. Kinvara Pro was a little bit ambiguous in what the shoe was supposed to be, while Endorphin Trainer I think better aligns this to its intended purpose. As far as the stats go, the Trainer costs $180, while the Pro 4 does have a more premium price tag of $225. However, it is going to be cheaper compared to the Elite 2, which sits at $275. As far as the stack heights go, they're somewhat similar. The Pro 4 has 39.5 in the heel, 31.5 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop, while the Trainer has 41 in the heel and 33 in the forefoot, again for an 8mm drop. The Pro 4 is the much lighter shoe at 7.5 ounces for a US men's size 9. It's pretty good for a racing shoe. And then the Endorphin Trainer sits at 9.9, which is good, but I wouldn't consider it overly light for the super trainer space. Moving on to the uppers, they feel very different. Now both shoes do fit true to size. However, the Endorphin Pro 4 has a much more snug race day fit and feel, more narrow in general. And then the Endorphin Trainer is kind of the complete opposite. A lot more space through the toe box, midfoot, and heel counter. So depending on the size and shape of your foot, the Endorphin Trainer a lot more accommodating, and then the Endorphin Pro is going to have again a much more snug and low volume feeling overall. I thought both shoes had excellent breathability, with the edge going to the Pro 4 mainly because it's practically an open mesh from the midfoot all the way to the toe box, while the Endorphin Trainer has just a very open and breathable toe box section, with the midfoot being a bit more closed off. But I thought the airflow and just again overall breathability on both was superb. The tongues on these shoes cannot be any more different. The Trainer has a much more traditional setup, a light amount of padding, it's gusseted, and I think it gets the job done. I quite liked it. The Pro 4, on the other hand, somewhat unique setup. It's a stretchy knit material. It's different than the rest of the upper, but it's integrated directly into the upper itself, kind of making the entire upper just one piece, even though it's made up of several different materials, if that makes sense. The good news is, if your foot fits the shape of this shoe, it's going to work really well for you. Mine was pretty much there. I did have to pull laces a little bit tight, and that does create some bunching of this knit fabric, which does create some uncomfortable experience on the top of your foot. I would just rather have a more traditional tongue, so I hope they kind of change that in the future. The ankle and Achilles section on the Trainer is going to have a light amount of padding, just feels more traditional in general, and a fairly stiff heel counter. It's also much wider compared to the Pro 4, which is narrow, has a very light amount of padding, and is going to be a little bit more flexible with some rigidity on the back for the spine of the heel counter itself. I thought the lockdown on the Pro 4 was superb. Again, just a little bit of issue with the tongue, wish it was a traditional setup, and the Trainer lockdown was good. I did have to pull laces a little bit tight just because you have so much volume to this upper, and when you push things, I just wanted to get a better lockdown. Again, it just feels more traditional, while the Pro 4 is going to have that race day fit and feel. And then if we move on to the midsoles, there is a whole lot going on here. They're somewhat complex, so let me do my best to break it all down. Starting with the Pro 4, this has, of course, a full-length carbon fiber plate, which really stiffens up things, helps you take advantage of the rocker geometry, and stabilizes this fairly soft midsole. Now, most of the foam here is going to be Power Run PB. It's been around with Saucony for quite a while. It's a beaded PBA foam. However, this year, or in this version, they added an internal core of Power Run HG, which is a supercritical PBA, a bit firmer, but also has more energy return to it. And then on top of all that, the sock liner is what Saucony calls their super responsive sock liner. So just an added bit of bouncy foam that sits right below your foot. Then for the Endorphin Trainer, which has a bottom layer, this white foam here, of Power Run foam and EVA based material, which is on the firmer side of things. However, on top of that firmer foam, you have a very soft and brand new foam from Saucony, which they call IncrediRun. It's a supercritical TPE foam, which according to Saucony has a 96% energy return, and then both of these work together to provide a very unique ride and feel. However, we're not done yet. We actually have a removable Power Run Plus insert, so a really thick, plush, and slightly bouncy insert. Power Run Plus is a beaded TPU foam. So we kind of have three foams stacked together. Insert Power Run Plus, top layer, that new IncrediRun foam, super soft and bouncy, and then the bottom layer is going to be that firmer and more stable EVA Power Run. Unlike the Pro 4, the Trainer actually only has a 3/4 length carbon fiber plate with a bit more bend to it as well, making it a less aggressive feeling ride compared to the Pro 4 with its much more stiff and rigid full length carbon fiber plate. If we flip around to the outsoles, two very different configurations. The Pro is more traditional in nature with plenty of rubber across the forefoot and strategic rubber patches in the heel. I was actually quite impressed with this lug pattern and traction despite it being fairly thin. The Trainer has a rather unique setup, very similar to what we saw on the Kinvara Pro. Most of it is exposed Power Run foam, that EVA compound. There is strategic rubber in the lateral part of the heel and the medial side on towards the top part of the toe box to give you a little bit of grip and added durability. Now, I think part of the reason they did this is, one, if you don't put rubber on the foam, it allows it to expand a bit more, making it feel softer, and it also helps save weight. Power Run, again, EVA is just firmer in general. I think by doing this, you allow it to be just a bit softer overall. I will say this outsole traction pattern has a slightly unique feel to it. It's a little bit slick in wet weather, but for the most part, it grips the ground quite well and gets the job done. So how do these shoes perform? Well, for me, the Endorphin Trainer was somewhat unique. It's not the fastest or most aggressive carbon fiber plated super trainer that I've ever used, and I wouldn't really consider it a bouncy or springy midsole either, despite it having that top layer of IncrediRun foam, which is Saucony's most energetic. And the big reason for that is that large slab of EVA foam on the bottom. I think kind of dulls the experience, gives you a great level of cushioning and kind of impact protection, but doesn't feel overly bouncy. I think the Pro 4 feels significantly softer, has a lot more pop to it, mainly because you have Power and PB and HG through and through, and there's no EVA foams in this midsole. Now, I think where this really could potentially shine through is for people who kind of want to get into a very approachable carbon fiber plated option, really haven't kind of explored that space, or want something that's plated but it's also fairly stable. There really are no stability or overly supportive super shoes. Some of the super trainers are, and I think that's where this slides into. It's not a stability shoe, but I would consider this a fairly stable neutral option. Again, just because of that fairly somewhat firm Power Run EVA foam base on the bottom. And then if we take a look at the Pro 4, this is absolutely the faster and more aggressive option, which makes sense because this is a super race day shoe. It's much lighter, has a stiffer carbon fiber plate, and much more energetic materials in the midsole. Now, funny enough, when you compare the Endorphin Pro 4 to other super racing shoes, especially the Elite 2 from Saucony, this is actually on the firmer end, has a much more resilient feel to it, a kind of a firmer, bouncy feeling, if you will. So if you don't like overly soft midsoles or don't like a super squishy feeling midsole, I think the Pro 4 will work well for you. I really like it for hardcore speed workouts. I think it is insanely aggressive and can really push the pace extremely well. When it comes down to it, I think the Endorphin Trainer is great for those that want a plated shoe with a lot of cushioning. You have a very soft top layer of foam and then a much firmer and supportive base underneath that gives you a lot of support and structure, which some other plated shoes don't often have. I think it works really best for those regular daily training runs. Again, wasn't my favorite speed work shoe. Really comfortable feel to it and plenty of volume to the upper. And then for the Pro 4, this thing just wants to go fast, a more resilient level of cushioning underneath with the Power Run HG and a PB combination, and a much more snug and slim race day fitting upper. Well, that concludes the review. Let me know in the comments which shoe you would go with, or would you love to go to the Elite 2? I would love to hear from you. I'm Ryan from Ryan's Running Reviews, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.